Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a powerful story, a parable, really, that totally challenges how we think about knowledge and expertise. And honestly, it might just change the way you see your own role in the world. So let's start with this story. It's about a simple cake seller. His life isn't anything fancy, but he's deeply present. He's totally in tune with the natural rhythms around him. Watching the grass grow in the spring, the clouds drifting by in the summer. He's got this kind of quiet, deep wisdom that comes from just paying attention. But then everything changes. A priest comes along, you could call him an expert, and tells the cake seller that his life is basically empty. He's told that the real stuff, the important knowledge, isn't found in his everyday life. No, that's something you have to go out and earn, through a ton of effort, something that has to be taught to you by somebody else. And he believes him. So he just abandons his whole life. For decades, he goes on this grueling quest, learning all these complicated rituals, pushing his body to the absolute limit. And he's doing it all because he's searching for this external wisdom, the stuff he was told he was missing. Okay, so this whole quest, it really forces us to stop and ask a pretty fundamental question. And this applies to any field, really. What if the knowledge we're all so busy looking for out there isn't actually out there at all? What if we're all just looking in completely the wrong direction? All right, let's really dig into this. Because what this parable does so brilliantly is shine a light on a huge problem in how we usually think about knowledge. It's this idea, this fiction, really, of the detached observer. The expert who can just stand on the sidelines, completely separate from a situation, and somehow perfectly understand it. So you have the traditional view, right? It's just like the priest in our story. The expert is this detached knower, someone who swoops in from the outside, extracts a bunch of information, and then delivers some wisdom. But a Buddhist lens, it flips that completely on its head. It suggests something radically different. That the person doing the knowing and the thing being known, they're always connected. The wisdom is already there. It just needs to be seen. And this brings us to a really powerful concept called interbeing. It totally reframes the expert's whole relationship to a problem. The idea is that we are never truly separate from what we're observing. We're always involved, always implicated, always part of the system. That line we like to draw between the observer and the observed, it just dissolves. So, okay. If we accept this idea of deep interconnectedness, then what? How does that actually change our approach? How do we start to act with more clarity and wisdom, not as some outside expert, but as a real present partner in the process? Well, the Buddhist Eightfold Path actually gives us a really practical guide. And look, this isn't about rigid dogma. It's about cultivating specific qualities. Take right view, for example. That's all about dropping our expert assumptions and trying to see things with a beginner's mind. Then there's right speech, which is just asking ourselves about the real impact of our words before we speak. And right mindfulness, that's the constant practice of just noticing when our ego is getting in the way and then just gently returning to a state of genuine open listening. Now, you might think this path of seeing things more clearly is about becoming some kind of passive, detached observer, but it's actually the exact opposite. It leads to a profound and frankly unavoidable sense of responsibility for what we see. And this gets to the absolute core of the ethical dilemma for anyone who's in a position to observe, right? When you see a system that's causing harm and you say nothing, maybe you're hiding behind the idea of neutrality. You're not actually being neutral. You are making a choice. Your silence becomes a form of consent. The Zen peacemakers actually have these 3 tenets that are a fantastic guide for this process. First up, not knowing. This means actively letting go of what you think you know, letting go of that certainty so you can see what's really there. Second, bearing witness. This is about staying present with the problem, with the suffering, without that immediate impulse to just jump in and fix it. And then finally, taking action. But it's a very specific kind of action, one that comes from that deep, clear-eyed awareness, not from your ego. So all of this, it brings us right back to our cake seller. Remember him? He's met one immortal, the traitor, but he's still desperately searching for that second one. He's still completely convinced the answer has to be somewhere out there. And this is where the traitor tells him the secret. He says, look, the magic, it isn't in some far-off teaching or some grueling physical discipline. It was right there, in the simple, present, ordinary details of the life he walked away from 2 decades ago. And in that one moment, that flash of recognition, he found him. The second immortal wasn't some other person out on the road. It was himself. It was the wisdom he had all along, hidden away in the very life he was told was empty. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. Our role, whether we're an evaluator, a consultant, you name it, any kind of expert, it isn't to show up and import some outside wisdom. It's to be a catalyst. It's to help a community see the incredible knowledge it already holds. So this leaves us with a final question to think about. If the real magic is already here, within our teams, in our communities, in our own quiet observations, what could we discover? What could we unlock if we just stopped searching so hard for external answers and started paying attention to the wisdom that's right here in front of us?